Go. We're live. We'll wait for a few minutes for a few people to get in, Matt. Just while people are getting in, I figure what we do is we go through we'll talk about some things, the highlights that you sent over to Jory. We'll go over the 12-month forecast, the most recent one from yesterday. Okay. And then unless you have something different, then I want to switch over to your pine one from Friday or from Sunday, because I think that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool chart. And then OSB, since it's just starting to make a little turn, and who knows. And then we'll finish it up with a framing package index, but we'll talk about a bunch of stuff in between if you're cool with that.
Yep, that sounds good.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So let me just turn this chat off. There we go. So we'll start it up. Welcome to Lunch with Lumberman. I'm working at home today, a little gout episode, so hobbling around. As Matt told me, it was an old man injury, but I think he's probably right on that.
I've never had it. I can't testify.
Well, you're in better shape.
It's coming.
So this is episode 11 of Lunch with Lumberman with Matt Layman and Layman's Lumber Guide, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. So kind of a crazy last week or two, Matt. I mean, it's always interesting the way we think things are going to happen and the way they do happen, right? So we talked about a whole bunch of things we wanted to talk about. So I'll have Nick bring up the 12-month forecast here, and we'll kind of look at that while we talk about, first of all, kind of what happened. And I've got a bunch of stuff I wanted to chat about with you. So existing home prices came out this week, right? And the thing that I noticed about them was the pricing of the median home price was just ballistic, right?
Yeah.
But I kind of, we kind of think about, well, my gosh, everybody, since these houses are going up, they're going up because there's building so fast and there's so much outtake. And my gosh, lumber should follow that, right? Because in theory, you think building good, lumber prices going up, and to some certain extent, housing starts, and housing is one of the major contributors. But interesting things happen along the road, and like you were saying, builders reducing order file. What's your thought on that? On builders reducing order file?
I think the whole phenomenon of this crazy market that we did. Hey, I got to think this is a message that the author has your website restricted, so others can't get on it. So maybe Nick can do it. I got people trying to get on. It says author has restricted access.
Okay.
Maybe put him on that because more people listen. But going back, I think the whole phenomenon was created by builders taking order files. We talked about these numbers. Every week I keep bearing down the same number. 1.3 million. We're saying right now we have 1.5 million housing starts. That means we got 1.5 million housing starts, but we're still going to be in a kind of supply shortage because we can only do 103 or 1.3. So yeah, whether it's 1.7 or 1.5 or 1.35, whatever, if it's more than 1.3 or whatever we're capable of producing, that's all we can do. And the rest of the time we got to wait, because what's happened now is the mills sold out that order files out for, instead of 2 months out, they were 12 months out. So they had to tell their buyers that they're going to have to wait for a year to get their product, and they just lost control of pricing. And whether builders admit it or not, they're creating a lot of the shortage, and all the things that they're short of is because they're trying to get everybody to pre-buy them for them, just like we did lumber. We got nothing's changed in housing. Nothing's changed in the number of starts that we're doing every day, beginning every day. It's as good as it's going to get all year long. The numbers get historically or seasonally adjusted when they have an adjustment factor. So I haven't talked to anybody that says their business is radically slower.
Hey, Matt, one thing is some of the people you may have sent the Teams link to instead of the Teams link, a different link than this one.
I did. I sent the one Jory sent me.
So it's not a Teams link. This is a different link.
Okay.
But it's hopefully people can get on during that. Here's what I wanted to say to that, and this is interesting. So I think he's probably on the phone on this call. He's always on. I didn't want to say his name if he didn't want me to say it. I got an email yesterday, and this just kind of like blew my mind and put everything in perspective, right? So he was referring to our call yesterday. Great info today. The largest part of our business is framing carpenters. We have about 500 field framers to frame our job as well as others. We're sold out through November, and builders are basically offering to pay a large amount, I won't put the number, over the bid price to get framers. It's not just my little market either. Another big home builder, a regional one out of a city, a more regional player, is begging for framers, and they're coming to talk to us. Our two largest accounts did not take any sales for the last month because they are sold out through the year, and there is no way to get them built. The builders are getting astronomical numbers right now, and to quote a 500-unit builder yesterday, I'm afraid to increase anything because somehow somebody will buy it, and we'll have to figure out a way to build it, right? So, I started thinking about that, and it's like we went back and forth in an email, and he followed it up with one. I really want to understand, this is the demand that people should be looking at is the builder backlog. All these sales and permit numbers are only as good as how many houses we can physically build in this country. Kind of like you just said, right, Matt? Labor is a gatekeeper right now. I think we're trying to give numbers of approved but not started numbers. But if one of the big industry organizations would look at how enormous the backlog is, everyone would be shocked. I would argue it's as large as it's ever been, knowing what we have in front of us on carpenters. He said, just my 2 cents. I'm another schmuck with an opinion, which is funny, right? But this is a guy in the field. He's got carpenters. They can only, and this is what you and I have been talking about, and you highlighted this 2 months ago. You can only build as fast as you can only consume as fast as you can build. And I think early in the year, everybody was like, wow, we're going to 1.7, we need to buy for that. And that business is there and it's pent up. This is just an opinion, but it's unbuildable at the current rate of labor coming in logistics, in other products, engineered wood, other stuff. I mean,
and now that the lumber market is coming to that realization of what's happened, it got overextended, overbought. What's the predictable human behavior reaction that they're going to do? Dump it.
Yeah.
Everybody's dumping. They're just dumping because we got to have ourselves on the cycle. We got overbought. Now they got overbought, and rather than working it off in a timely fashion, they're just dumping it. So wood's just shifting from place to place, that, like you keep saying, that it shouldn't go. It's just, I've heard it from, and I'm going to throw the name out there. Lowe's has sold about 20 truckloads of OSB the last 2 weeks to builders who are building, whether they're multifamily or not. But those are 10 trucks. One was 10 trucks, one was 8 trucks, I think. But just think if that 20 truckloads in however many hundreds of truckloads that got misplaced in the system were delivered and sold to LP or Boise to make I-joist, how much, and make some sturdy floor, how much easier this whole market would be.
Well, it's interesting just on the market itself. I mean, we're still in a good market because there's pent up demand and things are moving. Traders need volatility, so they want to bounce, right? Because they want to buy something low and sell something high, right? And the market certainly will. We sold off from the top on a CME relative standpoint, $900 a thousand in 30 days, right? So. Right. Just saying, right? I mean, so if everybody doesn't know we've had a sell-off, we have now, and it kind of is circling through to other items. I had a couple people call me today that are end-use buyers of OSB that bought extra because they thought the specialty wood wouldn't be out there, so they built a buffer stock. Now they don't need it because a lot of that product that they thought wouldn't be available is starting to show up more, so they're getting rid of some of that stuff, right? Which is cool. So let's look at what's your thought on the 12-month forecast here, Matt? I mean, it kind of rolled over in what you said. And I think last week you were talking about after we get through the 4th of July, it's a seasonal time where people start picking some stuff up. And there's actual trading going on in the market today. There was some people buying, I know in the spruce market, stepping in and buying some stuff.
Yeah, and the numbers are still coming down. I'm hearing numbers like 8 to 16 2x4s out of Canada at $800 delivered Chicago, and that's a mill number. And so there's still, as much as things are getting better and there's a little pickup all we're doing is we're buying people off the fence. If you want to put it, that's still a way to look at it. Like this, the fence got full of sidelines, people that were waiting on money and say, okay, so who's out there at 1,200? Who's on the fence at 1,200? Here's your 1,200. Who's on the fence at 1,000? Who's on the fence at 800? They're going to find a place where we get everybody off the fence. And I think, Ashley, what's going to happen is we're going to draw the DIY market back into this market.
Yeah, certainly we could. I mean, look at when you come off that hard off of that big of a number, you're going to have a buy-in somewhere. But I told a person today, like, hey, people are buying a lot. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. There's some buying today. Many people, I mean, the market is showing there hasn't been a lot of buying in 30 days, right? Because that's why a market sells off. But you're still at $900 1,000. I go, think of the cost of production. You're still at $900 1,000 on certain items. Like, and Nick, could you bring up the Southern Yellow Pine chart, please? Because this is an interesting one, and I always love how Southern Yellow Pine trades. Print minus like half, or
yeah.
I couldn't believe last week some of the numbers I was hearing, and this week, especially on the wides. I mean, how do you that's like catching a greased pig, right?
Yeah, it's like if you just scan prices on Southern Yellow Pine, they're mostly in the 8s. You know, prices at midweek are mostly the 8s, and they were in the 12s and 13s and 14s just 3 or 4 weeks ago. And it's crazy. You know, one of the things I want to point out about that FTP chart is, if you guys would look at that, the rise and the fall and the momentum of the distance that it travels up and down is not important. What the FTPs do is they forecast when in time the prices should rise and fall. So if you look at the green and red arrows, where they fall along the blue line is actually what happened. Where they fall along the black line is what was predicted, and where they fall on the blue line is what actually happened. So
Right. And look again, there's buying going on, and people there's value showing up, and there is an underlying. I'm sure there's multifamily that have numbers that they want to be hitting right now, and they probably have bought some and need to buy some. I just still go back to this.
Let me tell you what's going on with multifamily. They're well under their budget, but they're acting like they're not. They're bluffing that they need more, and they're already in high cotton. And I know there's going to be some exceptions to the rule where people put some tough stuff on the table. But remember, there were new projects being done when 2x4s were $1,500 at the mill, and lots of it at $1,200. So there's no reason to think that when you get down to $800, $900 mill, that's not everybody.
Yeah, no, but I'm sure there's still jobs out there that were taken, 6 or 8 months ago, those hotels we talked about and all that, but that just is what it is. So let's go over to the OSB one, Nick, if you don't mind, because that's one that's just starting to show up. And again, kind of look at that's starting to show up around. It makes sense because if this labor is an issue and we're having a hard, and again, I'm guessing, and people maybe can put in a comment, in the comment section, I'm guessing the labor is probably tough everywhere, but there are probably some that are more fluid than others, able to build more than others. But OSB is starting to loosen up a little bit and starting to trade. And Matt, what does this FTP show us on OSB?
It shows us that we're in the halfway through a cycle that should be a down cycle, and it's trending with it, but it's barely trending with it. And the big thing that's gone from OSB is the $500 premiums from Print Plus. Because it is moving. It has gone down significantly.
Yeah, and I will say this: OSB is moving, especially in it's trading at numbers, right? I mean, it's keeping moving and keeping fluid. But I think, like you said, some of those big index versus spot have come in, but that arbitrage has kind of come out, but it's starting to move, which is which is kind of cool.
Right.
So overlook obvious. You put 2020 spontaneous DIY. What's your thought there?
I tell the story. It's my favorite story about the pandemic is everybody says, "Uh-oh, we got a pandemic. We're gonna die." So everybody gets to go home and work from home in quarantine and put their mask and live in a bubble and all get in their little shell. And then everybody retreats from the office. They go home and they get tucked into their house and go, "Man, this house sure is small. We got to get a bigger house." And then they go, "Well, and while we're waiting on the bigger house, and I got nothing to do and I'm getting a check, I think I'm going to go outside and build a screen porch or a deck, honey. So I'll be out back if you need me." And you get that done. You realize, like, now you're stuck in this house and you made it as big as you can, but you've created an environment for yourself that you thought was going to be really, really good. And you improved it because you had nothing else to do. And now that those projects are done, the same, and I'm going to say men that did those projects are realizing they would rather really be at an office. So there's a lot of people who would much rather do that. And since they built the deck from last year, the fence from last year, the swing set from last year, they're not in their thought process of doing that again. That's over with. That's past in history. Now they're thinking about vacations. The vacations are half paid for. That money's not coming back. It's that $7,000 in the backyard last year is not going to be there for this year. So that's the overall thought. It's just thinking that the DIY thinking that was going to happen, and we may still get some return just because more stimulus coming out and just another $300, but that's a Band-Aid.
So let's bring up your framing package index, because this one is always interesting to me. And here's my little thought I was thinking about this week. So this is showing the index-ish price of what the adjustment is. And if we took the actual price of what low trades were this week, right, it would even be less, obviously. But you have to take what volume is trading at. With all this consolidation of these big companies, and if there's a framer on or a builder on right now, my guess is the market sold off so fast, all these big locations have high priced inventory. If they went from a 90-day selling cycle in the last year or six months to a 30-day cycle, when are these framers and builders going to see any of that significant, or will they at all?
Yeah, they will see it, but it won't be any sooner than 6 weeks, because kind of an average, even the contractor yards and retail lumber yards don't have a 4-week supply. They've got a 2-month, maybe 3-month supply based on where the level of interest is today. So they're pretty fat and sassy also. But the expectation is I got off track there. I just got to go.
No, so I was saying, so looking at your framing package index, and let's first of all talk about how much did we adjust since last week and over the last month?
10 grand.
Yeah.
It'll be 10 grand by the end of the month. The 10 grand that we got last month increase, the largest ever, we'll give all of that back this month.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're still, if you think, look where we were though. We were last year, this time we were $9 a square foot. This year we're giving back $5 a square foot, and we're going to be at 30.
Yeah. And at the same time, their labor prices are probably going up proportionally, right?
Here's a story. Here's a little quick story. I gave a guy a component manufacturer called at the beginning of the week and wanted to know about lumber prices and how they were going to do their budgeting and all that kind of stuff. Said, we got to start factoring in higher labor cost. He said, because we just to keep the people that we have to raise them up. He said, we're starting people out at $14 an hour and giving them $250 for they stay for 6 months. And I said, hold on. McDonald's is $17 an hour with an $800 sign-on bonus. And you think you're going to get a guy to come sling 2x4s all day instead of hamburger buns, for $3 an hour less? And I think one of the problems with our industry right now is we're underpaying. If we're going to keep this stuff going, and if housing is expected to build labor's the place you got to be able to attract people to, because we've got enough lumber to build 1.5 million if we need them. We just got to have the personnel to do it, and you just got to pay them to do it. And so far, the home buyer sector of this market has not rejected lumber prices. They have not rejected housing prices. They were just told they couldn't have them.
Yeah. Here's a good question from Jim, listening in from Washington State. How do you see EWP prices? And look, EWP is still strong. That's the biggest, the toughest thing for people to sell so much we're thinking about creating a place where anybody that's got any extra somewhere can list it on the platform, right? Because EWP is still tight, and
that's going to but that's going to be. I think that is 2 or 3 weeks at the most away from being taken care of.
Right. I just don't know because
it's all OSB.
Yeah. Listening in from how do you feel, especially being impacted with LP looking to pull out and sell their EWP business? Yeah, I don't know anything about that, so I would rather not comment on any particular company. But I will say anything with less producers in it stays a little stickier longer, right? So lumber sells off first. OSB takes a longer time to sell off for whatever reason. I mean, the other thing about EWP and all that, and why people have a harder time looking at other options. Well, yards do a good job because they have contracts and other things beside lumber that are hard to get. So that's why it's always hard for builders. They want to stick with who they're with because they don't just get lumber; they get everything from a yard, right? And but to the EWP question, I think that's been a lot of questions lately. I don't know how that's gonna work.
I was looking at James. I was looking at James's question there about all the extra costs it could potentially make a house $100.
Well, here's my thought on it. Again, when I look at this email that this guy sent me the other day on labor, and when I look at these great big venture capitalist companies, another one bought one yesterday, going in and buying larger chunks of homes, single family homes. Mm-hmm. There's enough demand out there. When we talked about this backlog, there's enough demand to build. I see the pace can only, if we doubled the labor force right now in building, we build more houses. We're kind of, again,
the worst thing that could happen is we don't take advantage of the fact that we have a commodity and a finished product that we can afford to pay more people to get off the bench and off the couch and come to work. And we got to do that. You can't be $14 an hour. You got to be $40 an hour.
Yeah.
And if we think that price is too high, then the home buyer needs to be the one to tell us that price is too high. And we're not giving them the opportunity to tell us what the top is.
Yeah. I'm just sending something back. Somebody was looking for some OSB that we sold. Yeah. And back to James' point, the median price of existing and new homes is going up. And for all those reasons you're citing, and obviously smart money wants to buy homes just as much as individuals want to buy homes. So my feeling is, I'm not an economist. I don't play one on TV, but when people want something they can't have, or it's in limited supply, it just keeps going up, right? And that's the path we're on in single family houses right now, and I see that continuing.
As far as the current market goes, the mills are doing an interesting thing of the way this market's ratcheting down. I remember when it was offered $1,400 2 weeks ago for a block. Now, a block is like 10, maybe 20 cars. It's not the world. And they told them no, they were firm at $440. The very next day, print was out, and they were at $1,200 ask.
Right.
And so they get a little and go like, instead of saying like somebody said, I'll take all you got at $1,400 again. No, I want $40 more. Then they say, okay, now the number's $1,200. No, tell them no again. Now they're down to trying to get rid of the stuff at $800 after telling people no, that they wouldn't have their business. Now they're out begging for it. It's just
right. Well, look at that kind of goes through. We're up against our half an hour. If anybody else has any questions, otherwise, kind of like what we talked about yesterday in the show is have a game plan. stick to it. If you have numbers that you want to buy at and stuff is sold, this isn't a place to be a hero in here. Keep trying to figure out what you need. And most importantly, keep showing up to see Matt and I every Thursday at 12 o'clock. We'll see what we can come up with for new ideas. Matt, what are your thoughts?
Be prepared to buy. This is a buying opportunity.
Yeah, there's a lot of it's a very fluid market, that's for sure. And there's a lot of people out there.
You could easily miss the bottom of this market by $200 or $300 to be in Fat City in August when you've got wood and nobody else does again.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, everybody, thanks for showing up. We'll see you next week, same time, same channel, and looking forward to thank you for coming.